hour early because of tonight's Under Armour All-American Game. The best of the 2023 class is showing off, and a handful of commitments are happening live, so we are here to get you ready for it all. Plus, can Oregon build on their early signing day success? Which five-star from Alabama's #1 class will make the biggest impact next season? And can Matt Rhule pull off a top 25 class? All that and more as the College Football Recruiting Show starts right now. Welcome in alongside Blair and Gulo. I'm Emily Proud. Blair is actually joining us from San Antonio, as are a lot of other guests we'll have on this show. It is the site of the All-American Bowl coming up this Saturday. We have more on that shortly, but don't forget to submit your questions on today's show, and we will answer them at the end. Blair, let's hit the headlines. Take the money now or get the best development and hopefully earn more in the long run? Well, that's the decision five-star wide receiver Brandon Inniss weighed when making his commitment to Ohio State. He told our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, that he turned down lucrative NIL deals to be a Buckeye. So, Blair, is this the exception or the rule?
I think for the most part, Emily, this has become the rule, especially for the elite players that essentially are betting for themselves. They are betting on their ability to go and make their own money eventually with their development, with however they're able to produce at the college level. And I think they're making their decisions with a long-term outlook. Kaden Proctor, actually the #1 rated offensive lineman, made the same decision. He said at check-in during the All-American Bowl earlier this week that he actually turned away more money and more NIL opportunities by flipping from Iowa to Alabama.
Well, both of those guys are locked in. Meanwhile, flips, though, still happening in the 2023 class. Wide receiver Raymond Cottrell flipped his commitment from Georgia to Texas A&M yesterday. What went down here?
Yeah, this is a move that had been in the works for quite some time. He took an official visit to Texas A&M back in the summer and returned to College Station for a game experience during the season. So once he didn't sign last month, it certainly had the makings of A&M making a splash to kick off the new year.
All right, well, one Aggie in, one Aggie out. Texas A&M freshman defensive lineman Anthony Lucas entering the transfer portal. Lucas was a former five-star and the number 32 player in the 2022 class. For those counting at home, he is now the second five-star Aggie from that class to enter the portal. Is it panic time yet, though, for Jimbo?
I don't think you have to press the panic button yet, but you're getting very close. That finger is approaching because as much talent as Jimbo Fisher was able to stock up, it comes into a hold, right? It becomes difficult to keep all that talent happy. I actually exchanged a couple messages with Anthony Lucas, the former five-star from the state of Arizona. He had a final five of Alabama, LSU, Notre Dame, A&M, and UCLA during his recruitment. He said he's going to be looking at whoever approaches him, but it sounds like he will be in the portal later this week.
All right, turning our attention to 2024 in five-star corner Ellis Robinson releasing a top five of his own. It's Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Miami, and Colorado. Now, he's been to every school except for Colorado, but there's still time for that. So, Blair, tell the people, who is Ellis Robinson?
This is a name to stash away and remember in the 2024 class. He's the #1 rated corner in that class, a big-time prospect with more than 30 scholarship offers to his name. He's originally from the state of New York, but he made his way down to the Southeast to play in Florida at IMG Academy for his junior season, and he should be one of the hotter names to monitor this spring and this summer as he approaches the official visits.
All right. Meanwhile, Tassili Akana told you at the All-American Bowl that a phone call from Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian was key to making his commitment to the Longhorns. What did he say on that phone call?
You know, it's interesting, Emily. He committed with us, if you remember, on the signing day special. And I think the big thing that Steve Sarkisian was able to sell was the vision that they have for him as a cornerstone and a key component of that defense. Remember, he was at the official visit weekend where Texas played Alabama. That was a really, really tight game. And I think he saw the potential of that Texas defense. So Steve Sarkisian came in hot at the end and made a really tremendous impression. And obviously the Longhorns won out in that recruitment.
Blair, I can never forget that backdrop from Hawaii. Just a beautiful commitment for sure. Well, meanwhile, we are getting you ready for the All-America game tonight, but our next guest joins us from the other major showcase this week. Guys, it sounds like anyone who's anyone is in the Lone Star State, because both of these guys are, and so is our friend Brandon Huffman, so welcome in. Brandon, every season, true freshmen make big impacts. Every team wants their true freshmen to make that big impact. We saw LSU linebacker Harold Perkins, Penn State running backs Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, both of them great. Texas lineman Kelvin Banks and others making some noise in year one. That's great. But what's great about this group in particular is the array of positions. From what you've seen, which positions allow for more immediate success?
Well, I would say offensively, running back and wide receiver, you see a lot of freshmen make early impact. You see them get on the field. There's 4 receivers on the field at any given time in a lot of these offenses. In the running game, you have that talent, but you've got 5 veteran offensive linemen blocking for you, an experienced quarterback. It's easier to get on the field. And I think those are the 2 positions where so many of those players have been playing at a high level from their freshman year, their sophomore year in high school on, that it's not as big of a jump to get from high school to college. So offensively, I think those 2 skill positions, you probably get guys on the field much quicker. Physically, they're ready. On the defensive side of the ball, it's not unusual to see safeties playing as true freshmen. It's not unusual, like you mentioned, with Harold Perkins, to see a few linebackers. It's in the trenches where you tend to be a little bit more veteran, because a lot of those guys need that adjustment physically with a year in the strength and conditioning program, with a year in the nutrition program. So a lot of it's the skill position guys, because of really, I think that the influx of 7-on-7, these guys have been performing and playing at a high level, and it makes the transition to college a lot easier at those positions where you can physically play, whereas opposed to the line where you might need to be a couple pounds lighter, a couple of pounds heavier to get on the field early.
Yeah, a little bit tougher for those big guys. Meanwhile, a player I know that you and many other are very excited about to see is quarterback Dante Moore. Now, UCLA obviously has the need with the departure of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but what about Moore's game shows you that he can be the guy early for the Bruins?
Well, I think if you just look at the arm that he's got a college-ready arm already. And if you look at Chip Kelly historically, he hasn't hesitated to play guys early on. Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't even participate in spring football, and he was this close to being the opening day starter his true freshman season. When he was at Oregon, Marcus Mariota played as a redshirt freshman. Essentially, Darren Thomas, who took him to a national championship game and a Rose Bowl, put his name into the draft so that Mariota could be the starter as a redshirt freshman. So Dante Moore is going to a school where they lose their 5th-year starting quarterback in a battle that may be wide open, with a transfer from Kent State and Colin Schlee coming in, with Ethan Garber, who's already there, and a couple of other guys. But Dante Moore is going to be the most talented physically quarterback on the UCLA campus. I think that ability to play high-level football for 4 years in Detroit is going to make that transition ready for him, and he's got that college-ready arm. Plus, he's just got an amazing skill set and leadership ability, but I think he can command a huddle even as a true freshman.
Yeah, Brandon, there's no doubt that UCLA will need that offensive boost. Another program that will need a boost on the offensive side of the ball is Texas A&M, and they get a 5-star running back in Reuben Owens, who flipped late from Louisville once Coach Scott Satterfield left for Cincinnati. And this allows the A&M Aggies now to bring in a player that has potential. What do you see in him?
Yeah, and I think, we talked about it a little bit earlier with Anthony Lucas going into the portal. Texas A&M may be in a position where a lot of those guys that they signed in their 2022 class that were true freshmen maybe didn't get as much playing time as they wanted. Now you might see Jimbo shifting more to playing a lot of the true freshmen. So what do? Well, you get the number 1 running back in the country. We saw during the Rose Bowl the impact that Nicholas Singleton had on Penn State's offense in that game. Richard Young can have that same kind of impact on Reuben Owens, not Richard Young, another good running back though. Reuben Owens could have that same kind of impact at Texas A&M. Just watching him in practice, even in the first couple of hours of the morning practice in the All-American Bowl, you see just how shifty he is, just how quick and dynamic he is in the open field, his ability to run between the tackles, his ability to catch the ball and move around in space. You see a guy who's already physically ready to make that jump, even into the SEC, and play as a true freshman and potentially be that spark plug to that Texas A&M offense, which had its problems all year long.
All right, continuing the year one impact discussion, an epic haul from Nick Saban on signing day. 2 guys, though, stand out in particular, both for their play and the need. The number 1 safety in Caleb Downs and the number 1 offensive lineman in Kaden Proctor. So how big a role can those 2 play in helping Alabama get back to where they've been many times before, but not this season, the college football playoff?
Well, it's just good to see that Alabama has been able to pick up some recruits lately that might be impact level player. I was wondering if Nick Saban was ever going to pull any elite players in. No, what he brings in, Blair and I were joking about this in practice earlier. You look at Kaden Proctor and you're like, okay, who's the NFL vet that came to practice with the team today? And it was Kaden Proctor. You look at him at left tackle. When he walked into the player registration room, you just looked at a guy that you expect to be seeing in a room of a different color in 3 years from now, a green room at the NFL draft. He's already got NFL size, already got NFL length, and he's an NFL level tackle already. Nick Saban has not shied away from playing true freshman linemen. Kyler Booker saw some time this year. Alex Leatherwood started as a true freshman. Jonah Williams started as a true freshman. So there's a history of Bama bringing in those NFL-ready bodies to be first-year starters. And I think Kaden Proctor, being the number one tackle in the country, he was in line to start no matter what school he picked. But at Alabama, which has done a really good job of recruiting on the offensive line, this is one of the best linemen that they brought in probably close to a decade.
Brandon, you're the founding member of the Benjamin Morrison fan club. Obviously, he had a tremendous true freshman season at Notre Dame, but they have another corner that's coming in that's also has a lot of hype in Micah Bell. Could he be the Benjamin Morrison for the Fighting Irish next season?
Yeah, and I think that he might even have a chance to impact the game in the way that Benjamin Morrison did with a number of pick sixes that Benjamin Morrison had, but it wouldn't just be on defense. I think Micah Bell is going to have an opportunity to come in and be a punt returner and a kick returner for the Irish. Brian Mason was the special teams coach of the year, the national special teams coach of the year. And you look at what Notre Dame special teams did this year, blocking punts, returning punts, and you see the speed that Micah Bell has. This is a guy that I anticipate is going to get himself in the lineup just strictly for special teams to start, but then get himself on the field potentially as a playmaker opposite of Ben Morrison on the other side of the ball, or on the other side of the field at cornerback. And I think he's got the opportunity to be that impact player in two phases of the game, both on defense and in special teams. And if there's two coaches that really can kind of, get that out of him, it's a guy like Mason, and then obviously a head coach like Marcus Freeman, who's a defensive guy at the heart. And I think both those guys are going to find ways to get Micah Bell on the field immediately.
All right, Huff, we're going to clip this segment, and we're going to watch it again next fall and give you a nice pat on the back for all the guys that you projected correctly. Blair, I got a question for you. Who of the guys that he just mentioned do you think could make an instant impact next season?
It's got to be Kaden Proctor for me. We saw him during practice, and we heard Huff joke about the big guys not being able to be physically ready to contribute at the next level because it does demand a lot of physical traits. It demands strength and size. And he checks off all the boxes. He's the first guy that you look at and you're like, okay, he's going to be ready physically. Now, will he be able to play fast? Will he be able to catch up from a mental standpoint? Will the game be too quick? And it doesn't appear like it will be. He was the first left tackle up in the reps during practice this morning for the West Side. And he's phenomenal. He's big. He's physical. He's athletic. He's got great feet, a great punch. And he's got a demeanor to him that I think going into his tenure and his career at Alabama, he's got a mentality to be among the best players. He mentioned that when he flipped from Iowa, that he wanted to be one of the guys in the room and not the guy, and that was going to push him. So I think when you mix in his physical traits and as well as his motivation as a football player, you have to look at Kaden Proctor as a big-time instant impact contributor next fall.
Yes, size does not seem to be an issue for him as it is for some linemen that enter into college. All right, we have our eyes on the big game just minutes away, so our friends Andrew Ivins and Greg Biggins sat down yesterday to run through a few guys who have already made an impression ahead of the game. Here's that conversation.
Greg, we've spent the past few days here in Orlando. Right now you're in your hotel room. I'm crashing on my father's couch, but it's Under Armour All-American Game week, one of the best, I think, really in the recruiting calendar. I mean, go back to last year's game, the MVP, Derek Moore, a kid out of the DMV. He was playing for Michigan in the college football playoff 2 years ago. Let's not forget, Coach Prime is one of the coaches for the Under Armour All-America Game. We saw Jalen Carter, Blake Corum, a few different guys. So what am I saying? The guys that make an impact in this game, they usually go on to do big things. On Saturdays, and me and you have been at practices, we've seen a ton of different individuals. I'm going to start with you. Who has stood out in Orlando over the past few days?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with a no-brainer for me. And, watching the quarterbacks, Jackson Arnold, overall, I thought a pretty strong group of just 4 quarterbacks. Usually it's 6. So it's been a little easier for these guys to get reps and get into more of a rhythm. But set it after the Elite 11. I think the ball just comes out of Jackson Arnold's hand a little differently, man. He's got such a smooth, easy stroke, and then the ball just pops out of there with a ton of velocity. He's accurate with it. All three levels. I think he's smart, drawn rays from the coaching staff, and just his overall feel for the position, how coachable he is. We're not seeing it out here, but we know from film he's a high-level athlete as well, who can extend and escape pressure and make plays with his legs as well. So, I mean, it's the year of the quarterback, right? We have 5 guys that are all dudes that are top 15. And, we love Arch, Dante, Malachi, Nico. I mean, I think Jackson Arnold is special, man. He deserves to be mentioned in that group. And he's been, our top guy all 3 workouts today, or all 3 workouts this week for me.
Oh, I agree with you. He's the odds-on favorite, I think, to win MVP on Tuesday night. I know the game's going on right now as we record this. But you mentioned it, Jackson. I think the X factor for him is the ability with his legs and to be able to move the chains on designed runs or when the play breaks down. And we haven't had a chance to see him do any of that in practice as it's non-contact. So Jackson Arnold, that's a good one for me. I'm going to go to one of the guys on the other side of the field, a wide receiver, Dante Cook. This guy is a Texas signee. I think he has been awesome. One of the best route runners in the class. Talking about someone who's caught 86 passes and 22 touchdowns in 16 games as a senior. It's a really, really good group of wide receivers here in terms of route runners. And I think Dante Cook, he's got the rubber band knees. He can make people miss. 1-for-1 or one-on-ones. I think on Sunday he went 3 of 4. So he has been awesome. On the smaller side, kind of has like a Devontae Smith type of frame, but man, he plays much bigger than those measurables suggest. Will catch anything in his orbit with his 33-inch vertical jump. So I'd love Dante Cook. And Greg, I think you've also liked some of these guys on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, for me, West Coast, I'll admit it. We don't get a lot of freaky rush ends, edge rushers. Maybe like every 3 or 4 years, we'll get a Kayvon Thibodeau. But I just watching these guys that are 6'4" and 6'5" and 240 with that kind of length and frame and athleticism, it's kind of rare for me, Andrew. I mean, you see him every day out there in the South, but PJ Adebawore. Hopefully, I did his name okay. You did it better than I did, but
you nailed it.
Nailed it. Okay, I'll take it. I love the kid. I think he's got everything you can want, man. That frame. He's laying at 240, 235, whatever he's listed at. He's going to put on 25 to 30 pounds easily without losing any of that burst, that get off. But he's got length with the arms. I saw him beat guys with the bull rush, just taking guys that are 280, 295 right into the bag. I've seen him beat guys with his get off around the edge. He's got the dip under the shoulder and get around the edge that way. He competes. He was taking plenty of reps. He's not out here ducking guys. I think he's a top 40 guy for me. And obviously you can't say someone in the top 50, the top 100 is underrated, but I'll tell you what, man, there's a couple guys rated ahead of him. Not going to name names, but I will take this guy. I'll take PJ over a lot of guys, man. I think he's special and somebody who I think's got Sunday potential for sure. I love his game.
Greg, I'm going to agree with you. And PJ, I go back to the Future 50 when I first met him. That was back in June. And we were just talking about his body. His brother's actually probably going to be selected, was at a star career that Northwestern, probably is going to be a day 2, day 3 pick in the upcoming NFL draft. But PJ was telling me he was eating 6 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches a day to put on weight to that lean frame, like you said. I think he has maybe the highest ceiling of anyone here in Orlando. And he has progressed a lot over the past 6 months. I thought on tape, a lot of that showed up in terms of his ability to improve as a pass rusher. But he is headed to Oklahoma. He's going to play for Brent Venables. And you're right. He is a stock-up guy. And as crazy as that sounds for someone inside our top 50, I think he's going to be in that 5-star conversation. And, fans keep saying, hey, how is this player not a 5-star? How is this player not a 5-star? I'm like, hey, look, PJ Adebawore, who has a 4.3 shuttle. He's 6'5" with an 85-inch wingspan. We can't even get him into the 32 right now. So he's one we'll be talking about at length. Finishing up here, another defensive lineman, a guy I think is more a little bit more polished than PJ. That'd be David Hicks, the Texas A&M signee. He signed on the final day of the early signing period for Jimbo Fisher and is going to join a defensive line room, that is absolutely loaded with young stars. Shamar Stewart, Walter Nolan, LT Overton, all those guys are already in College Station. But David Hicks, he's going to go take his talents. He's going to go play for the Aggies. And he was our, I think, alpha dog on day 1 of practices. I don't think there's a more powerful player here. I mean, he is 270 pounds, but it looks like he's someone that's playing at 320 pounds, finds leverage, gets up and underneath individuals. And he has just been awesome here in Orlando. Would not be surprised if he's on the field in 2023. Greg, before we wrap this up, because I know you wanted to do this, we're going off script here, but any kind of off the radar guys that have stood out to you? Because I know there's one of them that's headed to play in the Pac-12, a wide receiver.
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity to give my boy Mikey Matthews some love, right? Got to give some West Coast love. Mikey came in with a huge chip on his shoulder. Media room, I was the only guy that interviewed him. It was kind of lonely for Mikey over there. You saw 10, 12 guys with Dante Cook and Mekhi Lemon, and Mikey there's nobody that wanted to talk to the poor little Utah commit. But he's been good. I think he's made our top performers list 2 workouts. I mentioned Dante Cook, the best route runner. I will co-sign with you on that. But Mikey, probably a close number 2, man. The guy gets easy separation. He knows the offense. His head coach, Chad Johnson, is the head coach out here. So knows the offense. He's been working on it. But, man, he's a rugby guy. Strong, thick body, strong hands. Again, easy separation. A little more burst than I've expected to see out of him. So he came in with the chip. Wanted to show that he can compete with 4 and 5 stars. I think he's done that this week. So I'm proud of him.
He is a dynamic route runner. One more guy I want to show a little love to, Kamari Anderson, a tight end that was a late addition for Kentucky. He's out of Detroit. I think he's been awesome as an H-back. And then 3 defensive linemen from that are going to play in the state of Florida. John Walker headed to UCF, Ruben Bain headed to Miami, and Will Norman headed to Florida. All those guys have made things extremely difficult for offensive linemen.
A lot to watch for tonight. And in addition to the game, which is at 5 o'clock Eastern, we'll also see 4 live commitments tonight. You'll see Ethan Nation make his decision, Darrell Robinson, Ashton Porter, and Cameron Lenhart. So let's check in with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, to give us all the intel. First, let's start with the corner, Ethan Nation. Where are you leaning for the 3-star talent out of Georgia?
Well, I like Nebraska for Ethan Nation. He had an opportunity to take an official visit to Lincoln the weekend of December 16th, and I think him and his mother loved it. And talking to his father after the trip, they talked about the fan base and the tradition as other things that certainly stand out to Ethan and the family. But just the trajectory of the program, what Matt Rule has done at Temple and Baylor, and with the excitement around the Nebraska program, I think that they're in the driver's seat going into Ethan's commitment tonight.
Steve, Nebraska is also in the mix for Cameron Lenhart. He's an edge rusher from IMG Academy. He's also got Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State, and Georgia Tech among his list of finalists. Who do you think lands the 3-star defender today?
Yeah, I think by the end of the evening, Nebraska's in the top 25 of the 24/7 Sports Composite team recruiting rankings, because I think they're also going to land Cameron Lenhart, who was at one point committed to the old staff, got a chance to official to Nebraska in December and hang out with the new staff. Told me he loved his trip, loved the energy of the new staff. So many guys on that staff from the New Jersey area where he's from that he's clicked with over the years. And then he's also super high on Tony White, who Nebraska hired as their defensive coordinator away from Syracuse. But the team atmosphere, I think it was something that he could see himself being part of. Nebraska's always been in a great position for him. The Matt Rule hire only elevated that, and I think that he's going to end up playing his college football in Lincoln as well.
Yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Both of those guys we discussed have Nebraska among their finalists. You feel good about both of them there. So what stands out to you so far about the job that Matt Rule has done?
Well, I think when you look at their class right now that sits at number 28 nationally, they've recruited maybe the fastest receiver room in the country. Malachi Coleman, who's here with us at the All-American Bowl, he's got 10.4 speed in the 100-meter dash. Jalen Lloyd's another sub 10.4 guy there in Omaha who can flat out fly. They also go into New Jersey and land Quentin Ives, who's a touchdown waiting to happen out of Palmyra. I think he had 27 touchdowns in 9 games as a senior. So I think that what stands out about their class right now, right off the bat, is the amount of speed that they're adding to those skill position rooms.
Steve, there's a few more announcements to discuss. 3-star running back Darrell Robinson is also set to commit during the game. What's the latest with him?
Yeah, former Boston College commit that reopened his process. Charlotte got an official visit in December, and Charlotte's in an interesting spot for him because their head football coach is Biff Poggi, who's a high school football coaching legend from Darrell's way. Darrell Robinson plays at St. Francis. Biff Poggi coached there. I got a chance to meet Coach Poggi when he was leading the Gilman program there in Baltimore for so many years. So he's a legend, got legendary status out there in that part of the country for the amount of success that he had with high school football kids on the field and off the field. I think that that's a man that he really trusts to develop him in both avenues, and I like where Charlotte sits going into his commitment this evening.
All right, how about Ashton Porter, the 4-star defensive lineman, has a crystal ball to the hottest team during that early signing period. Of course, Oregon's Do you still like the Ducks to land him?
Yeah, absolutely. Took his official visit to Eugene the last weekend in December here when prospects were on the road. He also attended the win over Utah during the season. And I think that the way he looks at Oregon, and he's a one-time Northwestern commit, mind you, but the way he looks at Oregon, he sees the track record that Dan Lanning had developing players within his defense at Georgia, and Tosh Lupoy and his track record of developing players over the course of his career. I think that's put Oregon in position to be the one to beat for Ashton Porter going into tonight's announcement.
All right, I'll finish with this question that I'm going to present to both of you here. You're both in San Antonio for the Army All-American Bowl on Saturday. We'll have a full preview on Thursday's shows. But after check-ins yesterday and practices today, I know you're both at separate practices. So, Steve, we'll start with you. So far, who's caught your eye?
Well, for me, let's start with Keon Keeley, the number one ranked edge rusher in the country who's committed to Alabama. He's our alpha dog from the first practice today, an electric pass rusher that offensive linemen look like they're standing in concrete when they line up across from Keon Keeley. But he's a young man that when you look at his high school career, over half his tackles the last two seasons have been tackles for losses, and nearly half of those stops have been sacks. So he's an extremely productive player behind the line of scrimmage, has a relentless motor. And I don't think I've seen an edge rusher be this dominant in San Antonio since Will Anderson was a few years ago. So he's a young man that can come in and step in right away and fill those shoes that Will Anderson will be leaving open there at Alabama.
Wow.
Steve, you were at the East. I was at the West. I know we heard a lot about Keon Keeley even on the field, but the guy making noise over on the West practices was By Job. He's the Michigan State-bound edge rusher. He was phenomenal in one-on-ones, showing that quick burst, that explosive first step, and that agility to get out wide. He actually had a couple phantom sacks, and we call them phantom sacks because he's not able to really hit the quarterback, even though they're not wearing a different color jersey. But he really held up on some of those hits. He would have had some tremendous sacks there. So he was really impressive. Tamarian Parker was really good. Another player who really caught our eye was Anthony Hill, the Texas-bound linebacker, the 5-star from the state of Texas. And there was a lot of standouts, a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball on the west side of practice.
A lot of people in Senegal are going to be watching By Job. He told me when he checked in at check-in, the first player from Senegal to play in the All-American Bowl, and maybe the first player from Senegal to go Power 5.
Wow, that is awesome. See, you're going to find more nuggets like that from Steve with new episodes of the Wiltfong Whip Around every Monday and Friday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page, and you'll find more questions from Blair right now because it's time for some viewer questions. And our first one is from Tyler Chambers. Thank you, Tyler. I've noticed a lot of questions from you, so I really do appreciate it. He asks today, what are your favorite commitment memories from these high school bowl games? I'm sure you have plenty.
My favorite one that I go back to every year is when former 5-star cornerback Darnay Holmes, who is now with the New York Giants and starting among that defense, he ends up picking the UCLA hat when his little nephew was clearly pointing at the Ohio State hat. And then you see the reaction of his little nephew, and it's sad. He wanted him to be a Buckeye so bad. Darnay Holmes from Pasadena, California, wanted to end up playing in the Rose Bowl, but the nephew there, you see the disappointment. I think that went viral even before things could really go viral. But that, I think, is synonymous with announcements, with the live commitments. You see his little nephew there, not too thrilled to be wearing blue and gold. That one sticks with you when you come up with these live announcements.
I mean, I think it worked out for his uncle. I mean, he has a very successful career and is doing well in the NFL. I love the double fist.
Ended up getting drafted, right? He played a lot at UCLA. It worked out for him in the end. He was a hometown kid, being able to play his college games there in his hometown of Pasadena, California. But, obviously it sounded like his little nephew wanted to see him play some Big Ten football.
I was going to say, why would he want him to go further away from home? But I guess, it's a kid, and I love the little tantrum. So maybe we'll see some of that tonight. Who knows? This next one comes from Frank LaCroix. Where do you think Anthony Lucas is going to end up? We talked about him earlier on this show. You mentioned the finalists that he went through before his commitment to Texas A&M, but now it's anybody's game.
Yeah, he hasn't officially been into the portal, at least the last I checked. He was announcing his intent to go into the portal, so no communication has been made with other programs. But I keep going back to the schools that he was considering out of high school, that top 5 that included Alabama, included LSU. And then the 2 that I would look closely at would be Notre Dame and UCLA. You know, he already tried his luck in the SEC. He tried to see what it was like at A&M. I don't see him going that route again. He's a very academic kid who loves to go into the books, but also play football. He's multifaceted. His parents are both professors. So I think maybe the second time around, when he goes through the process, he will angle towards that. He will angle maybe towards Notre Dame, UCLA. Who knows who ends up going after him? But I think if he had to make a choice between some of those schools, I would like where those 2 stand with him. I think they were really impressive for him during the process. And it's so important, Emily, when these players take official visits, because you never know who's going to go into the transfer portal. Even if you come in second or third, you might have a second shot at that player in a year or 2.
Never give up. That's the theme of the day. That's the theme of recruiting portal, all of this. As a reminder to people watching us right now, we are usually on at this time, 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern every day, but we pushed it a little bit earlier to get you ready for the All-America Bowl tonight, starting in seconds on ESPN. But we're going to continue to answer a few more of your viewer questions. So if you ask some, stick around. Maybe we'll answer them. Let's move on with Anthony Eason. Who lands 4-star Jamari Johnson?
You know, he's been committed to Louisville, didn't end up signing. He's a big-time player, a big-time tight end from the state of California. There had been rumors that Oregon was making a late charge there, and it appeared that maybe he was on flip watch. Remember, we saw what Oregon was able to accomplish on signing day. They were the hottest team in the country, the program that was trending nationally, and Jamari Johnson it looked like at some point could be in the picture to be among that group. Didn't end up signing anywhere. Right now, I would have to think you have to like where Louisville sits with him. He's really close with Pierce Clarkson, who's his teammate out here on the West practices at the All-American Bowl. They're really tight. They've grown together. They were 7-on-7 teammates, and I would expect them to continue to play together at the next level. So, you know, maybe Oregon came up a little bit short, but that's just the hunch right now that we have on Jamari Johnson.
It was a crazy signing day for Oregon. As soon as we broke for lunch, it was like all craziness happened. Everybody decided to flip to Oregon, commit to Oregon. Definitely a great consolation prize for, of course, losing Dante Moore. But that was an exciting day for them. We'll see if they land Jamari Johnson. Next one comes from Eddie O. How do you think Makai Lemon and Zach Branch could be with the Trojans next season, a pair of 5-star wide receivers?
It just seems like any wide receiver that touches that USC offense turns to gold, right? We even saw Brendan Rice make a ton of plays last night in the Cotton Bowl, and he was in a way a bit under the radar during the season, you know, considering all the other playmakers that they have. Now, these are 2 true freshmen that would step in, and they have a ton of expectations on them. They are 5 stars that are expected to contribute from day one and be serious weapons for Caleb Williams. Now, who doesn't want to catch footballs from the reigning Heisman Trophy winner who makes things happen with his feet, makes things happen with his legs, and that offense loves to spread the ball around. So I would expect Zachariah Branch and Makai Lemon to both be explosive playmakers from the moment they step foot on campus. They are up to speed with that offense. They've been committed for well over a year to the Trojans, so I think they understand everything that Lincoln Riley expects out of them. And I would not be surprised to see both of their names on freshman All-America list by this time next year.
Whew, I like it. All right. One more question here from Antoine Stone. Who are the best wide receivers you have seen so far at the Army All-American Bowl?
You know, I was only at the West practice. I didn't get to see the East today, but a player that really caught my eye was Pimpton, the tight end that's headed to LSU. He was getting open up the seam basically all practice. Really impressive pass catcher who can high point the football, gain separation. He was a matchup nightmare for linebackers. Now, LSU loves to use the tight end, so that's another player, Pimpton, who I would expect to make an impact and to have a chance to really contribute in Brian Kelly's offense as soon as this fall, because based on what we saw at practice, where it's elite versus elite, he certainly caught our eye and our attention.
Another guy our director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, loves. He flipped from Vanderbilt to LSU. Excited to see what he does with the Tigers. Excited to see what happens on the field tonight in Orlando for the All-America Bowl. We will go watch that right now because that will do it for us here. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you back here on Thursday. For Blair and Gulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.